Now, sometimes you have a really hard time finding an error, especially if it's not an error that throws an error message, but if it's some logical error. Now, what would be an example for a logical error? An example would be that we indeed add 2 here because maybe we mistyped and will now never get an error message because I commented out that line. And in our widget tree, we also won't run into a situation where we select the wrong question because we render the result screen once we're out of questions or once our index exceeds the question's length. So we'll never get an error message here. And still, we have the wrong behavior. When we test our app on the device, we seem to skip a question, and we only got 2 questions until we reached the result screen. So something is wrong. But here we got no error message. So how can you now narrow down the issue and find out what's wrong? There are 2 ways of doing that. The quick and dirty way is that you use print. Here, for example, you could print question index to find out if something's wrong with that index. So we could do that here. And if I save that and I now click through my question or through my answers again, then we see that the question index is 2 and 4. And that might already be all we need to know to find out, oh, something's wrong with the index. Why is it increasing by 2? It should be increasing by 1. So this might be one way. Using print in your code is a nice way of printing out the current state of a given value and find out if it has the value you would have expected. But if you have more complex problems, using this print debugging can be too cumbersome. And therefore, you should use the more powerful built-in debugger. For that, quit the running app and now run the app in debugging mode. So start debugging, not start without debugging, but start debugging or use the respective shortcut. Now this will also launch the app, but as you can already tell, in a different mode. Here in Visual Studio Code, it automatically enters the debugging view, which you can also activate manually here under View, Debug. You can always go back to the Explorer if you want to see your files. But in View Debug, you now can do more than just add a couple of print statements. For example, what you can do now is set breakpoints. You do that by moving your mouse cursor to the left side of the line numbers here in your editor view. And then you can add a breakpoint by simply clicking there. Now, a breakpoint will halt the code execution whenever it reaches this code line. And you can then even look into the values of variables and properties and find out if everything has the value you expected and so on. You can also, if you want to, place breakpoints here in your widget tree. Simply try a couple of different spots and see where code execution stops. So now let's wait for this installation to finish, for the build process to finish, and let's see how the breakpoints work. Here the app already stopped. It launched the app and it stopped right away because I placed a breakpoint in my main.js file in my myAppState class in the main build method, therefore, right here when the widget tree gets built. And now you can use the controls here in the top right on this bar to move through your code. With this icon here, you move to the next line of code, so to the next instruction to be precise. With the arrow next to it, you can step into, for example, a function call so that you don't skip it and just proceed with the result, but that you really can go through each step in the function. And if you are in such a function, for example, you can use this arrow here to step out of it. So here I'm in the build method of the quiz widget now. Because I stepped to the next step, we see that now here build was called. And the cool thing is we can now step into this. And if you hover over things like the context here or over questions, you can see what's in there. You can inspect this, you can find out what values are in there. And if that all has the values you did expect, for example, we can find the current question index value. You can also add values to the watch list here on the left so that you can watch how they change as you progress through code. So here, for example, I could add question index, and now you see it currently has a value of 0, and we can check whether it stays that way. Now, once you're done for the moment, you can always press the play button here on the left to continue code execution until the next breakpoint is hit. And you see right now question index is not available because we're not in that code snippet anymore. Now, however, if I press a button, I'm taken back to the editor because I also had a breakpoint in answer question. I placed that earlier. And here we can now see what the total score is, for example. We can see what the question index is, and here we might then already spot our mistake, for example, our logical mistake. Again, we can step through our code step by step if we want to, so that we progress, well, step by step. We always can see which variables we currently have in the method we're at the moment. So score, for example, or this, which refers to the overall class, where we can therefore inspect all our properties of that class, bunch of internal properties managed by Flutter, but then also, for example, our underscore questions or our question index property. And with these tools, you should have everything to deeply analyze your code, what's going on there, what's changing, why it's changing, and hopefully spot logical mistakes. Now, if you're done, you can always press the play button, and if you want to get rid of breakpoints, you simply click on them to clear them, and now your code won't stop there anymore.